When I opened my eyes, I was inside a novel. The Birth of a Hero. A novel focused on the adventures of the main character, Choi Han, a high school boy who was transported to a different dimension from Earth, along with the birth of the numerous heroes of the continent. I became a part of that novel as the trash of the Count's family, the family that oversaw the territory where the first village that Choi Han visits is located. The problem is that Choi Han becomes twisted after that village, and everyone in it are destroyed by assassins. The bigger problem is the fact that this stupid trash who I've become doesn't know about what happened in the village and messes with Choi Han, only to get beaten to a pulp. Chapter 1. Prologue. When I opened my eyes, I was inside a novel, The Birth of a Hero. The Birth of a Hero was a novel focused on the adventures of the main character, Choi Han, a high school boy who was transported to a different dimension from Earth, along with the birth of the numerous heroes of the continent. I became a part of that novel as the trash of the Count's family, the family that oversaw the territory where the first village that Choi Han visits is located. The problem is that Choi Han becomes twisted after that village, and everyone in it are destroyed by assassins. The bigger problem is the fact that this stupid trash who I've become doesn't know about what happened in the village and messes with Choi Han, only to get beaten to a pulp. This is going to be a problem. I feel like something serious has happened to me. But it was worth trying to make this my new life. Chapter 2. When I opened my eyes, the man could feel someone gently tapping his body. The rough hand made the man think of the hands of an exhausted parent. It was that warm. "Young master, it is morning," but the voice was very profound. The man felt chills throughout his body, and his eyes subconsciously opened. Rather than the bright sunlight coming in through the window to warm the man's eyes, what he saw was an old man standing there with a satisfied expression. "It is surprising to see you wake up after a single attempt." "Huh." "The master wishes to dine with the young master since it has been a while. It looks like it will be possible today." The man could see a mirror past the old man's shoulder. Inside the mirror was a red-haired man who seemed to be confused looking back at him. "I guess that guy is me." "Young Master Cal?" The man turned toward the source of the worried voice to find the old man who looked like a servant looking toward him. But that concerned man was not the problem. The man clearly heard it. Young Master Cal. It was a familiar name. He slowly blurted out the name. "Cal Henitus?" The old servant was looking at him like he was looking at his own grandson. "Yes, that is your name, young master. I'm guessing you are still a bit drunk." Listening to the concerned response of the old man, the man naturally thought about a name that was even more important than the name Cal Henitus. "Becrox. Are you talking about my son?" "Chef. Yes, my son is the chef. Do you need him to make something for your hangover?" The man felt his surroundings turn dark, and he started to feel dizzy. He lowered his head and put it into his hand. "Young master, are you still drunk? Should I call the doctor? Or will you wash right now?" The man looked at the red hair that was falling in front of his face. It was a bright red color, much too different from his original black hair. Cal Henitus. Becrox. Becrox's dad, Ron. They were the characters that appeared at the beginning of The Birth of a Hero, the novel the man was reading before he fell asleep last night. He jerked his head up and looked around. He could see the bedroom that was completely different from a typical Korean design. It made the man think about Europe. Every single thing in the room was extremely extravagant and luxurious. "Young master." The man responded to Ron, the old man who was pretending to be concerned and worried. "Cold water." "Excuse me?" He needed something to clear his mind. He could see the face of Cal Henitus in the mirror behind old man Ron. Still looks normal. I guess Cal hasn't been beaten to a pulp by the main character just yet. His handsome face caught his attention. The man had become Cal Henitus when he opened his eyes. Cal Henitus, the trash who was beaten to a pulp by the main character in the beginning of The Birth of a Hero. That was who he was. "Young master, I presume you will not be bathing in cold water. Are you asking for drinking water?" Cal turned his gaze toward Ron. Ron may be pretending to be a benign old man, but he was actually hiding his true identity as a cruel and vicious individual. He made the request to Ron, "Please get me some drinking water." He needed to drink some cold water and clear his mind first. "I will prepare it right away." "Great, thanks." Ron flinched for a second and had an odd expression on his face, but Cal did not notice it. Ron had to leave the bedroom as there was only warm water in the room. Once he was left alone, Cal got off the bed and headed to the bathroom. If he really was inside of the novel, he knew that there should be a large mirror inside. As expected, the full-body mirror was inside the bathroom. Cal Hennetus, who had a lot of interest in his appearance and physique, had this mirror set up in here. Nobody else in the household had such a mirror. The man in the mirror had red hair and a pretty fit body. It wouldn't be wrong to say he had a body that would make any style look good. "I really am Cal." The man in the mirror indeed was Cal Hennetus from the novel. The Birth of a Hero was very descriptive about each of the characters' appearance. That was why the man had no choice but to agree that he had indeed turned into Cal Hennetus. Do people usually become calmer when they are surprised and shocked? Cal, no, Kim Rock-soo, calmly thought about the night before. It was a typical day off. It had been a while since he had read an actual book instead of on his phone, so he went to the library to check out some books. He borrowed the entire series since he planned to read all day long. The name of that book was, of course, The Birth of a Hero. He managed to finish the 5th volume before he fell asleep. But when he woke up, he had turned into Cal Hennetus, the individual that the main character mercilessly beat up in Volume 1. Will things go the way they did in the novel? He felt unnaturally calm. Once he got past the point of shock, his mind had calmed back down. He started to remember the contents of Volume 1, The Birth of a Hero. This novel was about the birth of the heroes in the Western and Eastern continents, as well as their trials and growth. The main character was, naturally, Korean. He was a student who had been transported into the world when he was a freshman in high school. Furthermore, his lifespan became as long as a dragon's lifespan, making him pretty much never age. This is bad. He was going to be beaten into a pulp by such a person. The important thing, however, was that he had not been beaten up just yet. Cal took his eyes off the mirror and walked into the tub that was full of warm water. He leaned against the tub and looked up at the ceiling. It was that expensive marble that was described in the novel. The estate that Cal lived in was actually full of marble. Cal started to mumble as he looked toward the ceiling. It's not like there's much I'll miss. His life as Kim Rock-soo. There really wasn't much to it. He was an orphan and didn't have much money. He also didn't have a person he loved to death, nor a friend he would give his life to save. He only continued to live because he could not die. Yes, he could not die. He completely hated the thought of death or pain. He became an orphan after both of his parents passed away from a car accident when he was little. He didn't like pain or death. No matter what it was, even if he was rolling in a pile of dog shit, it was still better than being dead. For that reason, I need to first make sure I don't get beaten up. Cal did not know what day it was in the novel right now, but he was sure that he had not met with the main character just yet. The reason was simple. I don't have the scar on my side. Cal Hennetus, the trash of Count Hennetus's family. A few days before meeting the main character, Cal was drinking and causing a ruckus. He was flinging things around and got stabbed on his side by a broken desk leg, resulting in the scar. What an interesting character. He didn't get the scar from fighting someone else. He got it because he got angry that the alcohol didn't taste good and threw a tantrum. He meets the main character after he gets the scar, and after a short discussion, he gets beaten to a pulp. Cal crossed his arms and started to think. He did not know what happened to Cal after getting beaten to a pulp in Volume 1. All he knew was that the main character, Choi Han, has many fateful encounters and overcomes a lot of trials to grow into a hero along with his party members. Thus the era for him to prove that he is a hero will begin. The Roan Kingdom that Cal currently lives in, as well as many other locations in the eastern and western continents, will be filled with war. It truly will turn into the time for the heroes to show their full potential. Cal started to frown. Kim Rock-soo, the man who became Cal. His life motto was pretty simple: living long without pain, enjoying the small joys of life, living a peaceful life. As long as I make the story proceed like normal while taking out the fact that I get beaten up, the main character will take care of the rest. For some odd reason, he could recall every single line in the book without any issue. Cal relaxed in the warm water while coming to a final conclusion with his now clear head. It's worth trying. It was worth trying to avoid the continent's war and living peacefully. This Trash's situation was much better than when he was Kim Rock-soo. The location of this estate was also in the corner of the Western continent, making it an ideal location to avoid the war. In the novel itself, there were many nobles who managed to avoid the influences of war. Even if he could not completely avoid it, he should be able to at least reduce the damages to a minimum. "Young master, are you inside the bathroom?" He could hear Ron's voice coming from outside. Cal thought about Ron's true identity. Ron was an assassin who crossed over from the eastern continent by sea. He pretended to be a benign old man, but the true Ron was a cruel and merciless man. "Yes, I'll be right out." His natural response was to talk informally to the old man. Cal realized what he was doing and made up his mind about what to do in the future. He needed to push that old man to the main character and send him away. That old man could easily kill Cal with a single blow, but treated Cal like a puppy you left alone because you felt bad for it. He was smiling gently, but there was not an ounce of care about Cal on the inside. In the novel, Ron leaves with the main character and his son after Choi Han beats Cal to a pulp. Cal put the bathrobe on as he quickly exited the bathroom. Ron was standing there with a smile on his face and a tray with a cup in his hands. "Young master, here you go." Cal picked up the cup and walked past the old man. He did not want to make eye contact with such a dangerous old man. "Great, thanks." Ron's expression turned odd once again, but Cal had already walked past him. Cal took a drink of the cold water as he started to think. There are too many strong people here. In fact, there were too many of them. No matter where the main character went, there were either strong individuals or individuals with hidden secrets. These individuals were both human and other races. I at least need the strength to protect myself. In order to live long without pain in the continent that will soon be filled with war, you needed a decent level of strength. Of course, you could not be too strong. Then other complicated things will happen. Cal thought about the different fateful encounters that occurred in the beginning parts of the novel. The powers that strengthen the main character and his party members. He was thinking about the ones that would help him live long without pain. There were a couple that came to mind. He just needed to pick one of them. "Young master, we will start to dress you now." "Oh, right, thanks." The door soon opened and couple servants entered to help Ron dress Cal. Cal did not notice that Ron had a stoic expression unlike his usual self as he looked at the clothes the servants were bringing in. Something simple today. He hated really complicated attires. Simple clothes that let you relax comfortably were the best. "Yes, young master." The servant in charge of the attires quickly pulled out some simple clothes, and Cal changed into the simplest of them all. He lightly frowned after finishing getting dressed. Even this simple attire was extremely extravagant and not to his liking. However, the reflection in the mirror was quite handsome. He really is handsome and makes any clothes look good. The face really was the final piece to fashion. He looked in the mirror and fixed his sleeves before turning around to look at Ron. Ron was once again smiling like a gentle old man. "Ron, let's go." "Yes, young master." Cal walked behind Ron. It was nice that he did not need to know the layout of the estate. He just needed to follow Ron wherever he needed to go. All of the servants that Cal saw flinched and bowed respectfully before they seemed to run away. Why are they so scared? Cal never hit people. He just liked to drink and play. Sometimes when he was drunk, he did break things. But that was why he was the trash of the family. He also did not treat people like people other than the few people he liked. Well, it's better if nobody talks to me. Cal thought about it peacefully. It would be more difficult if he was in the body of a model citizen. A trash can do as he pleases without worry. It was only possible because there was no desire to live as a model citizen. I will now open the door. Sure. Cal nodded his head toward Ron. The book mentioned that Cal treated Ron, someone who raised him like he was his own grandson since he was little, as nicely as he treated his own father. It mentioned that he always responded to Ron and treated him like a person. Of course, Ron did not really think that way. That was why it was easy for Cal to talk to Ron. He just needed to answer Ron's questions and treat him like a human being. "I hope you enjoy your breakfast." "Thanks. Ron, make sure you eat a good meal, too." Cal walked past Ron and into the dining room. He could see his family sitting there. His father and the current head of the Hennetus household, Daruth. Next to him was Cal's stepmother, the Countess, as well as her son and daughter. The four people looked toward Cal. "You are late again today." Cal's gaze turned toward his father, who spoke. The birth of a hero described Cal's feelings for his father like this. His father was the one person that Cal listened to. The reason the trash did not leave the area and got everything he wanted inside the Count's territory was because of his father, Count Daruth Hennetus. But, unfortunately, Cal's father was unlike the other strong fathers in this novel. He did not have any special skills or influence. He just had a lot of money. However, Cal liked this a lot. It was the perfect family environment to live a simple life. Then there were the other three individuals, his stepmother who knew that he did not like her and avoided him. Her smart firstborn who found it difficult to deal with his much older brother Cal, and the cute youngest of the family who avoided her older brother Cal. But it wasn't like Cal bothered them or they bothered Cal. They just treated each other like strangers. Cal thought this was such a great environment to quietly live alone. "Take a seat." "Yes, father." Cal looked at the feast on the table that did not meet his definition of breakfast and sat down on his seat. He then felt something was odd and lifted his head up. "Is there something you need to say, father?" "No, I do not." Daruth was staring at Cal. The rest of the family was doing the same. Cal made eye contact with each of these family members. They all quickly turned away whenever he made eye contact and continued to eat. "I guess they find me really difficult to handle." Cal turned his head toward the table as well. This luxurious feast that was different than the breakfast he used to eat just to fill his belly made him start to smile. He first started by cutting the sausage in half with the knife. It is so juicy. He didn't know if juice flowed out as soon as he cut into it because it was handmade or because it was cooked well, but the color on the sausage made him hungry. Cal started to smile without realizing it. Clang. He heard something fall down and made eye contact with his younger brother Basin. He could see that Basin had dropped the fork in his hand. "My apologies." Basin calmly apologized like the personality described for him in the novel. The servant in charge of the meal quickly came over to hand Basin a new fork and picked up the fork on the floor. Watching that made Cal think that it was nice to be a noble, before he focused once again on the food in front of him. Cal had found the first good thing about coming into the novel. This breakfast was extremely luxurious and so tasty that his stomach was completely happy. The smile on his face could not disappear. Ho! That was why he did not hear his brother Basin's shocked proclamation. Chapter 3. When I opened my eyes, too, Cal looked around at all of the dishes in front of him. He then moved his fork towards a salad made of fruits that he did not recognize. After filling his stomach with meat, soup, and bread, he wanted to try something new. The fruit looked like an orange, but the color was closer to that of grapes. Cal put the fruit in his mouth and took a bite. In that instant, sweet fruit juice filled his mouth. He really hated sour fruits, so this extremely sweet flavor in his mouth made him subconsciously start to drool. At that moment, he made eye contact with his father Daruth, who was looking at him. "Cal." Daruth quietly called Cal's name before hesitating. He then started to frown and move his mouth. Cal did not like that awkward atmosphere and started to speak. "It's delicious." "Yes, it tastes like trash, huh? Did you say it is delicious?" "Yes, everything tastes wonderful." Cal picked up a different fruit this time and smiled after tasting the sweetness in his mouth once again. The trash, Cal Hennetus, never cared for etiquette anyways. He probably shouldn't do this while speaking with his father, the head of the household, but whatever. He's just trash in the first place. It really is best to be the trash. Nobody really cared no matter what he did. As long as he can prevent himself from getting beaten up by the main character, it will be a good life. As Cal expected, nobody criticized his lack of manners. In fact, Daruth actually had a smile on his face as he started to nod his head. Yes, it really is delicious. It is nice to see you enjoying food so much. Daruth really seemed like the only person who cared for Cal. He didn't even seem to care about Cal's lack of manners. Well, a truly caring father should probably try to fix this personality of Cal, but this Cal did not care as he was not the real Cal Henitus. Yes, please make sure you eat a lot as well, father. Basin let out another ho, and Cal, who heard it this time, turned his gaze back to the dishes. The 15-year-old Basin. The 3 years younger brother of the Cal that he possessed was difficult to handle. Unlike the trash Cal, Basin was smart, sincere, and very responsible. The people of the family were pushing for Basin to be the next head of household. Kim Rock-Soo agreed with this sentiment even after turning into Cal. Rather than having a complicated life being in charge of this territory, I'd rather use my position as the Count's older brother to laze around and live peacefully in a section of the territory. Cal did not try to argue with Basin. He could hear Basin's gasp of shock and knew that Basin was looking down on him, but what could he do about it? Once Basin becomes the head of the household, his personality was one that he would probably not kill Cal. But in order to not get hurt and quietly move to a small village, he needed to not get on Basin's nerves. If that's not possible, I'll just make some money beforehand and go somewhere that the war will not reach. Cal pretended not to hear Basin's gasp and continued to eat. Once the meal was over, his father, Daruth, was the first to get up. He seemed to have been satisfied with breakfast, as his face was filled with a smile. It really was delicious. If breakfast was like this every day, Cal would probably give up some sleep to come eat breakfast all the time. Daruth looked around at the family members who got up after he did before resting his gaze on his firstborn son, Cal. Cal, is there anything you need? Cal was confused at Daruth's sudden gesture, but he decided to honestly answer. Please give me some money. Sure, I'll give you a lot. Daruth answered without any hesitation. This really was a well-off family. As a territory that mined for marble and grew grapes for wine, they were overflowing with money right now. Great. Please give me as much as you can. Cal could feel his 2 younger siblings looking at him, but there was no need for him to be embarrassed. Wasn't it better to ask for money instead of drinking and causing a ruckus? Furthermore, he needed money to proceed with his plans. That fateful encounter to get himself a strong enough power to keep himself safe. He needed some money in order to cause that fateful encounter to happen. Sure, I'll give you as much as I can. Cal started to smile after being satisfied with his father's response. However, he was at a loss of words after returning to his chamber and receiving the check from the deputy butler, Ainz. The check that was issued through a partnership with the Treasury Department, and the Magic Department made Cal's heart run wild. So much money. This family didn't seem to only have a bit of money. In fact, they seemed to have a lot of money. The novel did mention that Cal received a large allowance, but it did not mention the exact amount. However, he could realistically understand how large it was based on the amount listed on the check. 10 million gallon. It is about equivalent to 10 million Korean won. If it is like this, Cal could change his plans. Cal's brain started to quickly think about his options. I'll be heading out now, young master. The deputy butler delivered the check and bid goodbye, but Cal did not respond. Deputy Butler Ainz just treated this as normal and headed toward the door. However, he soon stopped moving. It was because Cal had gotten up from his seat and said something to Ron. Ron, let's go to the study. Ainz then became anxious at Cal's words. Ron was the same. Did you say the study? Cal found this odd. This sly old man's voice was shaking a bit. Was there a reason he could not go to the study? Yes. He needed to go to the study to form his plan. There were no desks or even any paper in his chamber. There were a lot of expensive-looking alcohol bottles, though. Excuse me, young master. What is it? Cal looked toward the anxious-looking deputy butler. We have not been able to do our morning cleaning of the study just yet. Is that so? It's fine if it goes a day without cleaning. No, sir, we cannot let that happen. The deputy butler was extremely pushy about this for some reason. He then smiled brightly and put up a single finger. Please just wait 1 hour. I will put my name on the line to make sure that the study is completely clean, not like a study that has not been used in 10 years, but one that was used just yesterday. Sure, whatever. He didn't mind waiting an hour. Great. Then I will go report this to the master. No need to do that, but go ahead if you want to do so. Yes, young master, I will be off now. Okay, sure. Like a well-trained deputy butler, Hands closed the door without making any noise and disappeared. He seemed to be in a rush. Cal knew that there were 3 deputy butlers vying to become the official butler. Maybe that was why Hands was so passionate about it. Ron. Young master, why are you blanking out like that? My apologies, young master. No need to apologize. Ron had another odd expression on his face, but Cal put the precious check in his inner pocket as he asked. There was so much going on that he did not even have any time to ask about today's date. What is today's date? This question would seem odd coming from anybody else, but the servant Ron answered in a gentle voice. It is the 29th day of the 3rd month in the 781st year of the Felix calendar. That is a problem. Excuse me? Nothing. Cal tightly clenched on the 10 million gallon in his pocket once more. The only thing he could trust was money. Yesterday, the 28th day of the 3rd month in the 781st year of the Felix calendar. That was the day that the villagers of Harris Village, the village that the main character Choi Han went to after escaping from the Forest of Darkness, the place that Choi Han felt human affection for the first time in this world, made friends, and created a second family, were all murdered by an unknown group of assassins. Even Cal, who had read until the 5th volume, did not know the true identity of this secret organization that murdered the villagers. Some readers may be saying something like this while reading about this situation. I thought he was really strong. What was Choi Han doing while they were murdered? It is only natural to think like that. However, there is a reason this novel is called The Birth of a Hero, and not The Strength of the Hero or The War of the Heroes. Birth. It was the story of a person who overcame all sorts of obstacles and carried the pains of his past as he became a hero. Love and friendship comes up along the way as he meets enemies and friends. Something that cannot be missing from a story is the awakening. He may have explosive talents and have lived for tens of years in the Forest of Darkness. But through all of that, Choi Han was still an innocent and gentle person who could not kill another human being. He had no issues killing monsters, but Choi Han had never hurt another person. In order to turn someone like him into a hero, the novel had created a situation for Choi Han. In order to heal the lady who treated him like her own son, Choi Han had gone into the Forest of Darkness to find some precious medicinal herbs. He had to travel deep into the forest to find it, and, when he finally managed to find the herb and headed back towards the village, he found the corpses of the murdered villagers, the burning houses, and the assassins who were about to leave. Choi Han went berserk after seeing this and killed someone for the first time. Of course, the people he killed are the members of this secret organization, and this secret organization clashes against Choi Han every so often throughout the novel. Choi Han only returns to normal after killing all of the assassins from the secret organization, before falling into a state of despair as he is unable to gather any information from the dead bodies. He then buries the bodies of the villagers before making a promise to himself. I will kill them all. I will kill all of the people that made this happen. Choi Han realized what the sadness of death was at this moment, but his first kill starts to twist his mind. Of course, he starts to feel again and starts to become more human-like after meeting his party members later in the novel and grows to become a true hero. Ron. Yes, young master. A cup of cold water, please. I understand. After Ron left and he was alone in the room, Cal covered his face with both of his hands. The problem was that the city that this twisted Choi Han arrives at after leaving Harris Village is the city called Western, located in the center of the Hennetus territory. Cal, who happens to run into Choi Han, annoys Choi Han and ends up getting beaten up. That is when Choi Han gets his first subject/party member, the reliable Chef Becrox. I was going to head there in advance and help him out. The best scenario to not get beaten up is no longer available. I did care more about potentially saving the people of the village, but there is nothing I can do about it at this point. Now, all that is left is to make sure I act in a way to avoid getting beaten up by the angry Choi Han, who is moving at a crazy speed to arrive at Western City by tomorrow. Avoiding the main character is not a good idea. He needed to run into Choi Han so that Ron and Beecrox run into him as well. That was the only way for the three of them to leave this place together to start their official journey. Then that left just one course of action. Have them run into each other and then get out of their way, with the best possible first impression if possible. Young master. Ah, thanks, Ron. Cal took a sip from the cup that Ron brought over. He then started to frown. It's not cold water. It is lemonade. He really is an insidious man. He knows that, just like Kim Rock-soo, the original Cal hates sour things. But he still chose to bring lemonade, which would take more work to prepare than cold water. Cal wanted to be angry at the sour taste, but he could not do so because he was afraid of that assassin old man. He could only drink the lemonade. Thanks, it was wonderful. No problem. Young master, we should be able to head to the study soon. Great. Ron's benign and gentle smile caused Cal to have the chills. He once again clenched onto the 10-million-gallon check for support. Money really was the only thing you could trust. Chapter 4. They met. 1. He could not think about anything else while food was in front of him. He could not even prevent the admiration that was flowing out of his mouth. Ha! It's so delicious. The deputy butler hands flinched at the words that came out of Cal's mouth. Cal was sitting alone at the table, with Hans standing next to him. Other than breakfast, Count Hennetus's family tended to take care of the other meals freely. To be honest, it was mainly because they each had their own responsibilities. Nobody said that it was easy to be a noble. Especially if you were in administration or politics, you had to follow a strict schedule, dropping everything else if you received an order from someone above you. Count Daruth had responsibilities as the lord of the region, making it difficult to share other meals together, while Cal's younger siblings timed their meals based on their studies. The Countess was busy interacting with the wives of the influential households in the region, as well as other tasks. Now that I think about it, Cal put the fork down after suddenly remembering something. Hans started to get nervous, thinking to himself that this was the normal Cal. He was worried because he did not know when that fork may fly toward his face. Cal did not care whether Hans was nervous or not as he got lost in his own thoughts. There are a lot of experts hiding as artists or craftsmen. The Rhone Kingdom was pretty advanced in construction and the arts, especially sculpting. It was because there was a lot of marble in the Rhone Kingdom. Thanks to that, the Hennetus region became the 5th best marble mining region, bringing in a lot of money. Furthermore, a mountain range took up most of Count Hennetus's region. Even though it was located in the northwest, the mountains were extremely fertile, allowing the residents to grow grapes in between the mountains for wine. Although there was not a large quantity of wine from these fields, it were still treated as one of the best wines in the entire continent. However, Cal's mind was filled more about the strong individuals, and not these facts. He had even missed lunch as he sat in the study thinking about that all day. Why are there so many experts on this stupid land? This isn't the Murim. There were so many hermit experts here like in the Murim. That was why Cal came to a conclusion. Do not mess with just anybody. An average-looking chef could be a poison expert, and the person working in the repair shop could be someone who viciously killed people with his wires. This was that type of land. Sigh. A deep sigh came out of Cal's mouth. He had just completed his plan to prevent himself from dying and living peacefully. Young master. Cal, who wanted to let out another sigh, turned his gaze to the source of the cautious voice. It was the deputy butler, Hans. What? Should I get them to make something else? Huh. Hans held back his sigh after seeing Cal frowning and opening his eyes widely. He was thinking that Cal would now flip the table. Hans didn't know why the Count would assign him to take care of Cal, but held back his rising despair as he waited for Cal's response. And Cal did respond. Why would you remake something this delicious? Excuse me? Cal picked his fork back up and sliced the meat. Dinner was even fancier than breakfast. It was not delicious because he had never had something like this when he was still Kim Rock-soo, but because it was an extravagant taste, even for the original Cal. Kim Rock-soo didn't know how Cal grew up, but the original Cal had issues with anything that was not fancy. He liked that fact quite a bit. Everybody knew that was the case and only brought the best of the best. Cal put a piece of the well-cooked, but still juicy, piece of steak in his mouth as he asked Ainz. His attitude was one that said he did not care about etiquettes at all. Ainz, who made this meal? It was second chef Beecrox. Cal suddenly lost his appetite. Beecrox. He was clean-cut and was the son of the servant Ron. However, unlike his father, he specialized in the way of the sword and not assassinations. Beecrox was also obsessed with cleanliness and sharpened his spotless blade every day, using that same sword to slice the heads of his enemies off their bodies. He also specializes in torture. That kind of guy ends up admiring Choi Han's sword skill and chooses to follow him. His father Ron makes a deal with Choi Han to help him and chooses to leave with the two of them for the sake of his son. Although he may not look like it, Ron cherishes his son quite a bit. Cal looked down at the medium-rare steak that was still slightly pink on the inside and gulped a few times. I can't allow my blood to shed like this steak. He turned his gaze toward Ainz, who was still looking at him before cutting another piece of steak and putting it in his mouth. It is delicious. He is Ron's son, right? I did not know he was such a talented chef. I will deliver your message to Chef Beecrox. I'm sure he will be very happy to know that young Master Cal complimented his cooking. Is that so? Let him know that I truly enjoyed this delicious meal. Yes, sir. Ainz was looking at Cal with a stiff expression, but Cal had made up his mind. He was not going to mess with Beecrox and would work to make a good impression. Cal enjoyed the meal once again with a relaxed heart. Everything will be settled once he made Beecrox run into Choi Han and leave the region. Cal had already made what he thought to be a pretty good plan to make that happen. Just like during breakfast, Cal completely emptied the dishes. He had a satisfied smile on his face as he got up and looked toward Ainz. Ainz, why did you suddenly end up being assigned to me? Ainz had mentioned before dinner that his father, Daruth, had sent him to personally handle Cal's needs. Although Cal did not know about the situation in Count Henatus's family once Choi Han leaves, Ainz was extremely skilled and probably had the best chance of all the deputy butlers in becoming the official butler. Ainz slightly bowed his head and answered the question. The Count Nim was concerned after hearing that young master had missed a meal while working in the study and ordered me to make sure that the young master makes sure to eat every meal. As a result, I will be overseeing just the meal-related duties for the young master. To be specific, Ainz was responsible for the meals. Is that so? My father did something he didn't need to do. I would eat properly on my own, but I guess I would not have realized it was time for dinner if Ainz did not come tell me. Cal was busy writing down all the fateful encounters in the first 5 volumes of the novel in Korean. After leaving the dining room, Cal smiled toward Ainz. Ainz, take good care of me. Of course. Please take good care of me as well. I will do my best. Ainz stumbled a bit as he answered, but Cal just let it be. Cal saw Ron standing there as soon as he opened the door and started to frown. Ron, didn't I tell you to go eat? Cal told him to go away because he did not want to see this old man's face, but he would not leave. He just roamed around Cal like a fly. Ron had been waiting outside the door when he was in the study, but even that got on Cal's nerves. Young master, it is my duty to take care of you. Cal clicked his tongue after seeing Ron smiling at him. He then threw a bit of a tantrum. Enough. I don't need it, so go eat. Why don't you go eat even when I tell you to go eat? Don't follow me. You know my temper if you do, right? Cal threatened Ron with his gaze to reinforce that he did not want Ron to follow as he headed back to the study. When he peeked back, Ron was standing there with a stiff expression while Ainz was looking towards him with shock. Should I not have thrown a tantrum? Cal was scared of the assassin old man's stiff expression and turned his head back around before speeding back to the study. The desk was completely empty. The document that he had been working so hard on to write in Korean was already burnt in the fire. Cal had done so himself. There was nobody here who knew Korean, but he had to be careful. He had also told all the servants not to enter the study without his permission as well. I remember everything anyways. Kim Rok-soo had always been good at remembering things he enjoyed. Comic books, novels, movies, no matter what it was, as long as he enjoyed it, he was able to remember the names and appearances of the characters. Of course, if he didn't like something, he would not remember anything about it at all. Cal leaned his back onto the chair and thought about what he needed to do in the future. First, I need to see Choi Han tomorrow and do that. The corners of his lips started to slowly rise. I need to pick up a shield, to live long without dying. He had no intentions of fighting. In order to achieve that goal, the first step was raising his defenses. Second was finding a recovery method. Third was being faster than anybody else. Fourth was a strength that does not hurt him but can kill others. Of course, the most important thing was to avoid the battlefield or anywhere where there may be bloodshed. Cal thought about these so-called plans of his as he slowly closed his eyes with satisfaction. He was thinking about it even as he fell asleep. At least, I will not be beaten up even when the time comes for it in the novel. The indestructible shield. Cal was thinking about this first shapeless strength he was going to get as he fell asleep. The corners of his lips that had gone up did not seem like they would ever come down. Fateful encounters did not have an owner. It was a first-come, first-served type of deal, the important day. What did he need to do in order to calm his nerves and be successful? Cal thought the first step was to have a hearty breakfast. He felt like the only thing he did after coming to this world was eating, but he was going to enjoy the meal since he will be busy for a while starting tomorrow. I heard you fell asleep in the study last night. It somehow ended up that way. He casually answered his father's question and continued to focus on the food. The fact that he did not even look at his father probably seemed rude, but it was fine since he was known for being the trash. Cal finished eating first and stood up. The screeching noise of the chair made everyone focus on him. I will head out first. It was not proper etiquette, but Cal's father Daruth just seemed to like his son no matter what. He looked back and forth at Cal and the empty plates before starting to smile. Sure, go ahead. Thank you. Cal needed to quickly leave because he had a lot of things to do today, but Daruth held him back for a second. You don't need any allowance today? I do need some. This really was a family with a lot of money. Cal held back his smile after hearing that his father will send him the allowance through hands, and left without even saying thank you. He did make eye contact with his brother, Basin, for a moment, but Cal just ignored it and headed toward the dining room door. He saw that Ron was following him and shooed him away. Ron, I'm going out. Don't look for me. Don't look for me. That was Cal's code for letting Ron know that he was leaving the estate that was located near the rear of the city to go drinking. Whenever he did this, Ron just smiled and told him to have a safe trip. Will you not go to the study today? But for some reason, Ron asked a rare question today. Cal started to frown. Ron, I don't think that is something you need to be curious about. I understand, young master. I will be waiting for you. Cal's forehead started to show even more wrinkles after hearing that Ron will be waiting for him. Don't wait for me. Cal flicked his finger to beckon one of the servants standing at the entrance of the residence over and walked out with him. Cal still seemed angry, so that servant did not say anything as he followed behind Cal. Once he exited the residence, he could see the garden and the gate of the exit farther away. It was only then that Cal let out a sigh and peeked backwards. He could see Ron's stiff expression through the closing door. I'm glad I was able to shake him off. He was glad that Ron did not follow him. However, Cal was afraid of that stiff expression. He was an assassin after all. Cal decided that he will treat Ron better and not make him angry starting the next interaction as he exited the estate. Of course, he was on a carriage. He arrived at his destination a little bit later. Young master, is this the right place? The driver cautiously asked as he opened the door. He then peeked toward the shop in front of him. The driver's face was clearly filled with confusion. Yes, this is it. Cal, who was wearing clothes that would be fancy to others but was the simplest thing in his closet, walked out of the carriage. Nobody was around them, as they had moved away as soon as they saw the carriage with the Count's crest on it. The fragrance of tea with poetry. It was a tea shop that allowed you to read poems while drinking tea. This clean 3-story building looked to be pretty expensive. It was true that the owner of the shop was very wealthy. In fact, as the bastard son of a concubine of a large merchant guild, he was even wealthier than Cal. The only thing was that he was living here while hiding that identity. If I recall correctly, the owner goes to the capital around Volume 3 to meet Choi Han there. It is there that he claims that he may be a bastard son of a concubine of the merchant guild, but that he will become the owner of the merchant guild. The man who shouts and swears to Choi Han that he will become the owner of the merchant guild. Cal only read the first 5 volumes, and thus did not know if the man ever ended up becoming the owner of that merchant guild. But since he was one of the main character's partners, he probably will succeed. Cal looked toward the driver who was sweating like a hog and gave an order. "You can leave now." "Excuse me? Are you going to make me say the same thing twice?" "No, that do I not need to wait for you, young master," Cal casually answered as he opened the door to the tea shop. "Yeah, I'll be here for a while." Gulp. He could hear the driver's gulp behind him, but a much clearer and pleasurable noise filled Cal's ears. Clang. A quiet but clear bell sound announced Cal's entrance into the tea shop. Cal stood at the entrance and looked around the tea shop. It was still early, and there were not many people there. Cal could see that all of them were shocked to see him there. Well, the novel did say there was nobody in this region who did not know about Cal. He was public enemy number 1 for the merchants because he had a tendency to break everything in their shops. Welcome. However, the owner of this shop warmly welcomed Cal in. Cal looked toward the baby pig-like man who welcomed him in from the counter. He must be the owner. The wealthy bastard Billows. His round face and full body definitely looked like a baby pig like the novel described. His charm was his extremely bright smile. He looks like a piggy bank. Cal took out a gold coin and put it on the counter as he ordered. "I plan on staying on the 3rd floor all day today." Billows stared at Cal with a smile on his face. Cal pretended not to notice as he pointed to the bookshelf. "Any tea that is not bitter. Do you have novels here too, or just poems?" Clang. The sound of someone putting their teacup down rang through the shop. Cal just thought of it as someone putting the teacup down hard and looked toward Billows. He preferred novels to poems. "Of course, we have a lot of novels as well, young Master Cal." "Really? Then send up the most interesting book and a cup of tea." "Yes, I understand." Cal's gold coin fell onto Billows's chubby hands. Cal turned away as Billows tried to give him change. "I'll drink more tea later, so just keep it." "But it is still too much, young master." A gold coin was worth 1,000,000 gallon. Having that coin that was worth 1,000,000 Korean won, Cal did something that he had always wanted to try. "I have a lot of money. Consider it as your tip." Talking about how rich you are. Who cares if Billows actually has more money than he does? He also knew about many fateful encounters that will earn him a lot of money. Cal tried to look cool as he pointed toward the tables on the 1st floor with his chin. "Well, if it is too much, you can treat everyone here to a cup of tea on me." Golden bell. He wanted to do something like this once. After he told his father that he needed allowance, he received 3 gold coins which were worth a total of 3,000,000 gallon. "Young master still?" "Ah, enough. Just bring my tea." It really was good to be the trash. Cal did not care about being respectful as he headed up to the 3rd floor. He could hear whispers coming from behind him, but he did not need to care because there were already enough rumors about him, the trash of the Count's family. Just like I thought. There was nobody else on the 3rd floor right now because it was early in the morning. Cal took a seat in the innermost corner of the 3rd floor. He then looked out the window. This is the right spot, the spot where you could best see the northern gate of Western City. Cal planned to watch Choi Han from this location today. Chapter 5. They met too. He gets chased away from the gate early in the morning. Choi Han headed in the direction he remembered hearing about from the villagers after he finished burying all of his beloved villagers. He was heading toward Western City. Choi Han had been transported to this world when he was a freshman in high school, but he had lived here for tens of years already. Of course, The fact that most of that life was spent trying to survive in the forest of darkness made him mature in a slightly twisted way, and, as such, he was more rational than anybody would expect after such an incident. I need to go report this to the Lord at the castle. Harris Village may have been a remote village, but it was still under Count Henetus's jurisdiction. That was why Choi Han headed to Western City, hoping to at least prepare a small funeral for the villagers. He was also planning on looking for information regarding the assassins he had killed when he had lost his calm, as he was unable to ask them any questions. However, sending the dead off properly came before revenge. If you think about it, he really is an affectionate person. But losing all of the first people who showed him love after tens of years in the forest of darkness at once made it impossible for Choi Han's mind to not become twisted. In the novel, that was when Cal messes with Choi Han and touches a nerve. He remembered what the Cal in the novel said to Choi Han. "Why should my father care whether or not some useless villagers are dead? This cup of alcohol in my hand is worth more than all of your useless lives combined." Choi Han starts to laugh at Cal's words as he asks back, "What an interesting thought. I am very curious to know whether you will change your mind or not. Shall we test it out?" That test was beating Cal to a pulp so that he was almost dead. The amazing thing was that Cal never changed his mind even after he was beaten to a pulp. "Ah, I'm getting the chills." Cal started to rub his arm after seeing the goosebumps that were developing. He quickly took a sip of the tea that Billows had brought for him. He then looked out the window once again, only to get the chills right back. It's that punk. The moment the gates opened for the morning, a young man wearing clothes with black marks everywhere, such that it made it seem like the clothes were burnt in multiple places, approached the gate. It was Choi Han. Cal did not get up from his seat as he observed Choi Han. His speed was admirable, as he ran like a lunatic through a distance that would normally take a carriage a week to travel. But, as a result, he looked like a mess. Of course, the events in the village were responsible for a bit of his messy look as well. The guard blocked Choi Han's path as he walked in with his head down, looking completely exhausted. Cal didn't know what they were saying, but he could see Choi Han shake his head at the guard's question. I'm sure they're asking if he has any identification. The guards of Western City were generally gentle, but they were strict when it came to the rules. They replicated their liege, Count Daruth's personality. They kicked him out. As expected, Choi Han walked back out of the gate. He did not even throw a fit. After continuously running for a day, his slightly recovered conscience told him not to kill an innocent man. Choi Han will now wait until night time before he stealthily jumps over the city wall to enter. He then runs into Cal, who was busy drinking away. Screech. Since Cal was alone, the sound of the chair being pushed as he stood up sounded pretty loud. He went downstairs and informed Billows, who was at the counter. I'll be back soon. Don't clear my spot. Yes, young master. I look forward to your return. Cal ignored the smile on Billows's chubby face as he walked out of the tea shop. He didn't break anything? Cal could hear someone's voice coming from inside the shop, but he did not care. He needed to set the foundation to earn that indestructible shield today, the indestructible shield. It is not talking about a physical item. The best comparison might be a mage's mana shield, something that does not actually have a physical form. However, it was very different from a mana shield, as it was closer to superpower than magic. The funny thing was that the human who created the power, but ended up dying, was someone who served a god but ended up being excommunicated. All sorts of weird things are in this novel. As with the history of any fantasy world, this world also had its ancient history. During that ancient time, neither magic nor weaponry was developed. Instead, it was a society where your own innate talent or talents gathered from supernatural occurrences played a pivotal role. The strongest powers in that society were superpowers, divine powers, and natural forces. It was a very primitive time. Some of those powers have lasted all the way until now, staying hidden in certain locations or items. It was possible to take those powers for yourself if you meet the right conditions. Ancient powers. The heroes would find these powers, however. These powers were all supporting powers. not strong enough to be used as a hero's mainstay. These were the powers that Cal was looking to find. Everything but the divine powers. Whether it be God or angels or devils, Cal did not want to get involved with any of them. That was why Cal was looking for the powers that people naturally developed or came from nature. That is the way to make sure I don't need to put in any effort. Those were the types of powers he was looking for. Something like sword art or magic would require him to put in effort to practice. He didn't want to do something like that. Unlike other books, the ancient civilization in the novel, The Birth of a Hero, was not that strong. As civilization developed, the magic and summoning skills that were developed outshined the natural powers left behind by the ancient civilization. Superpowers were the same way. Most subtle superpowers would be blown away by a single hit from the aura that was used in present day. It wasn't like the heroes just used these powers sparingly for no reason, and my goal is to collect these subtle superpowers to become decently strong. It was a satisfying goal. Especially because he also knew the ancient power that could strengthen these subtle superpowers. In order to take the first step in his plan, Cal started to look for the ancient power that was hidden in Western City. He knew the requirement to earn that power. "Young master. Welcome." Cal just nodded his head at the baker, who bowed so low that it looked like his head might touch the ground to respond. Gasp. He could hear the baker gasping, but Cal pretended not to hear it. He felt bad about how his trash reputation was making this baker so fearful. "Give me some bread." "Excuse me?" Cal pointed at all of the bread in the bakery and sternly responded. "Everything from here to there." Clang. The gold coin that Cal took out started to spin on the counter. "Pack it all up." The baker seemed to be frozen in place as Cal continued to speak. 2 or 3 more gold coins should be enough for a week's worth of bread, right?" The baker's gaze, which had been on the gold coin, moved to Cal. It was too much money to pay for the bread. Cal just stoically responded to the baker's shaking eyes. "I can go somewhere else if you don't want it." "No, it is nothing like that. Young master, I will pack it as fast as possible." The baker was extremely respectful for a different reason than before as he moved around quickly. After a few minutes, Cal left the bakery with a bag full of bread over his shoulder. Even though it was just bread, it weighed quite a bit. The weight made Cal start to frown, and he ignored the baker who was watching him leave as he stepped into the street. Cal leisurely walked down the street, noticing that anybody who made eye contact with him would quickly turn and walk away. The majority of the people even ran away to avoid eye contact with him. It really is different than Korea. It is truly a fantasy world. Cal looked around as he wandered around this market that gave off the typical fantasy feel. MMPH. Any time he made eye contact with a merchant, they became shocked and avoided his gaze. Tusk. Cal really must have lived up to his title of trash in the past. Cal was talking shit about himself as he walked past the market and toward the western part of Western City. The slum is located to the west. No matter how wealthy a territory may be, there are always going to be poor people. In a situation like this, most people would probably expect something along these lines to happen. It is a fateful encounter that you can earn by sharing food with the poor. Unfortunately, that was not the case. Cal could feel people peeking at him as soon as he entered the slums. This was the place where both the idlest and the most vicious people lived together. Although the poor may not know the face of their liege, the Count, they knew Cal's face. These people who had nothing needed to pay even closer attention to the type of person that would cause a ruckus in the market, pub, plaza, well, you name it. And Cal has probably caused a ruckus there too. Tusk. Even though they knew all these stories about Cal, they couldn't resist the sweet smell of the bread in Cal's bag. Cal just ignored all these gazes as he continued to walk. The tip of his expensive leather shoe started to become dirty from the dirty water. An unknown stench also filled Cal's nose, making him naturally start to frown. This made him start to walk even faster. The slums were on one side of a small hill and constituted of old houses. Cal was heading toward the top of that hill. As he got closer, the gazes and steps of the people following him started to lessen as well. Cal's sharp glare probably played a role in this as well. "It's better here." After being freed from the stench, Cal stood at the top of the hill and turned around to look down at Western City. Of course, this hill was not as high as the Count's estate. There was no way that they would allow the lord of the territory to live somewhere that was lower than that slums. Cal came back to his senses as he headed toward a tree that was fenced off in all directions. The fence, that was made of planks the width of Cal's body, had an entrance that had rotted. It was easily broken once Cal pushed at the fence. This large tree seemed to have lasted for hundreds of years. Trees in the slums were usually chopped into firewood or had its layers peeled off to make it useless, but this tree was not like that. The reason was simple. The reason could be heard in Cal's ear. These two were the only two who had followed him until the end from the slums. "You can't approach that tea tree." Cal ignored that warning. He heard another worried voice as well. "You can't go there. It's a man-eating tree." A man-eating tree. Anyone who hung themselves on this tree became mummies overnight. Furthermore, any blood that lands on this tree instantly disappeared. Finally, there was only dirt around this tree. Grass and even weeds were nowhere to be found. This was the tree that Cal was looking for. A long time ago, during ancient times, there was a person who loved food so much that his gluttony in the place of worship got him kicked out. That person ended up starving to death. This tree is said to have grown on top of his body, and that person's grudge and strength were both in this tree. The indestructible shield that Cal was looking for was here. How primitive, mysterious, and strange was this? The majority of the ancient powers were mysterious like this. Cal took a bread out of the bag and carefully observed a hole that was the size of an adult's head. He needed to first send away the owner of that voice before starting his work. However, before Cal could even say anything, the voice was even louder this time as they could no longer see Cal from outside the fence because he crouched down. The voice was shaking quite a bit. "You're going to die. Don't do it." Cal pressed his temples with his fingers. Sigh. The number of people following him decreased the closer he got to the man-eating tree at the top of the hill. However, the owner of that voice continued to follow him. There are always nosy punks no matter where you go. Cal frowned as he turned his head around. When he did, he noticed a girl who seemed to be around 10 years old, holding her younger brother's hand while looking at him. Her eyes were full of concern. Seeing that Cal was frowning and staring at her, the young girl stumbled on her words and started to mumble. "It's a man-eating tree." "You're going to die?" "I won't die." Cal took 2 breads out of the bag and threw it toward the little girl. It didn't matter if it rolled on the ground because they were all individually wrapped. "Take that and get lost." The young boy instantly grabbed the bread, but the young girl was still hesitating. In the end, Cal needed to use his identity. He stood up and pushed his head outside of the fence. "You two don't know about Cal the Trash." The young girl's face turned pale. Her younger brother just looked toward Cal before picking up the other bread for his sister and started to tug on her arm. "Nuna." "Uh-huh." The young girl looked back and forth at the tree and Cal even as she was being pulled. "You can't die." Cal clicked his tongue at the young girl who continued to say that, before making sure nobody else was around as he sat down underneath the tree. Nobody would be able to see what he was doing unless they came right up to the fence. "Let's get started." He started by taking a loaf of bread out of the bag and putting it into that hole. His hand soon disappeared into the darkness underneath the tree, and Cal could feel a cold sensation as the bread in his hand disappeared. He felt like his whole hand might be sucked in and quickly took it out. The darkness in the hole underneath the tree was still the same. If you die with a grudge, you have to resolve that grudge. This man-eating tree wasn't actually a man-eating tree. It was a tree that would eat anything. It was the side effect of the power that was left behind by the person who starved to death. But for such a thing to be related to an ancient strength, it was comical, but made it seem more realistic. I remember it said I need to feed it until the darkness disappears. The darkness in the hole underneath the tree was not the result of shade. It was darkness formed by the grudge. This could not be done with other people. One person had to continue to provide a large amount of food until the darkness disappeared. Once the darkness finally disappears, the light that was hiding underneath would appear. Once he eats that light, the indestructible shield will become Cal's. Eat all you want. Cal put the opening of the bag into the hole and emptied all of the bread into it. In a normal situation, that small hole should have become filled with bread, however, only the darkness continued to remain once Cal removed the bag. I guess I'll need about 10 more large bags. The darkness in the hole was slightly fainter than before. 10 bags. Only someone like Cal, with 3 million gallons as allowance, could casually say such a thing. Rumble and odd cries seemed to resonate from the tree. It seemed to be saying that it was hungry and asking for more food. Cal felt like the darkness might suddenly reach out and grab him. It is a bit scary. Cal quickly got up. He felt like he should not be here for a long time. Just what can a stupid grudge do? Gluttony was a scary thing. I'll come back tomorrow. Cal said goodbye to the rumbling tree as if it was a person and exited the fenced area. Cal noticed the siblings eating the bread as soon as he entered the slums. For someone who was claiming that he should not go there because it was a man-eating tree, they seemed to be enjoying the breads. They must be liking the flavor, because both of them seemed very happy. My. Cal snorted at the siblings before ignoring their gazes. However, their gazes were not on him, but on the bag that was filled with bread earlier but was now empty. They were probably curious, but what could they do? They couldn't do anything. These children were probably too scared to even go near the man-eating tree. However, it is always good to be on the safe side. It would be bad if they went up to the tree and put their head into the hole and got eaten. The children of the slums have no fear. It was because they treasured a single grain of rice more than a blade coming their way. Death is always around them, so they do not fear death. They fear being hungry more than death. It was something that was written in The Birth of a Hero. That was why Cal decided to speak to the pair of siblings. If you want to eat bread again tomorrow, don't say a thing. The two siblings did not say anything. They were immediately following Cal's order. The young girl, who seemed hesitant earlier, put her hand on her brother's mouth and pretended to not see Cal. Cal smiled and thought that she was pretty smart, as he quickly left the slums. The people in the slums who knew Cal had gone to the top of the hill were looking at him wondering what crazy thing he was doing now, but Cal liked that kind of gaze. The people outside the slums looked at Cal weirdly as well, but Cal didn't care about these gazes. Ah, young master. You are back. Once Cal returned to the tea shop, Billows greeted him pretty happily. Yes, bring me a new cup of tea, a refreshing one this time. Cal headed back to his seat on the 3rd floor. It should have been pretty busy at this time, but there was nobody else on the 3rd floor. They were all avoiding the trash of the Count's family. That was why Cal could relax. Here is your tea, young master. I also brought up some desserts. Ah, great. Thanks. Cal only continued to look toward the city gate as he took a sip of the tea. Billows observed Cal's face with an odd expression before he quietly left the 3rd floor. It was weird to hear Cal thanking someone. Cal continued to order tea and desserts as he looked outside the window until the sky slowly turned orange and the sun set. He only got up when night arrived and it was dark outside. It was now time to go interact with the dangerous dude who will come from outside the wall. Chapter 6. They met 3. When does a person get more angry? Is it when they get hit by a strong straight or when they are hit 5 or 6 times by annoying jabs? It is, of course, the latter. Cal threw 5 jabs before he was hit, which means 1 jab should be okay. Are you heading out? Yes. There were not many people left in the tea shop. It was past 9 p.m. This was the time when there were more people in the bars than tea shops. Since this was the time that the people mining in the pits went to drink, the bar should be full of people. I look forward to your next visit, young master. Cal nodded his head at Billows's statement. The tea was great. Cal shared his observations with Billows, and the book was good even though I only got through half of it. I especially liked the main character whose abilities are appreciated and the way he grows. In that instant, the corner of Billows's eyebrows frowned for a moment before returning to normal. His eyes were cloudy as he observed Cal. However, Cal did not notice, as he was trying to remember the contents of the book. He was too worried about Choi Han that he did not pay too much attention to it. However, it was still fun to read while having this sense of urgency in his heart. It might be an auto setting from possessing the original Cal's body. But Cal was able to understand the language of this world and had no issues reading and enjoying the book. A smile formed on Cal's face as he continued to speak to Billows, who was standing there with a blank expression on his face. "Don't let anyone else read that book, so that I can read it whenever I come." This truly was the immature son of the Count, who was trying to monopolize someone else's property. Billows, the bastard son of a wealthy merchant guild, might not like it, but what could he do? Cal was the son of the Count. "Yes, I will reserve this book only for young Master Cal." However, Billows's response was different from what Cal expected. Billows smiled brightly as he urged Cal to come back soon. "Please come again soon. I will be waiting for you." "Sure, whatever." Cal didn't want to go, but had to leave to go meet Choi Han. Ring. The bell rang once more, and it suddenly felt like the tea shop became louder once Cal left. However, it was even louder outside the tea shop than it was inside. Even though this territory was far from the capital, the fact that a lot of artists resided here and that they had a special product made it a popular location. These individuals, as well as the miners who were looking to relax after a long day in the mines, all were out late to drink. Cal walked that street alone. If you think about it, he really is a unique person. Normally in fantasies or martial arts novels, the trash of the family tend to hang out with the gangsters or bad crowds. They drink, fool around with women, and cause a ruckus on the streets or stores. The funny thing was that Cal Henitus actually hated gangsters and scammers. In fact, he despised them. He thought that they were all scumbags, the worst of all scumbags. It was better to at least be the citizens who worked hard even though there was no hopes for a better future. That was why he never beat people up when he was drunk, but had no issues throwing things at the gangsters he saw. Well, attempted to throw things since his aim when drunk was terrible. Maybe that was the reason. "Agu, young master, you're here." The owner of the bar was extremely afraid of Cal. It was because of that one day when Cal broke pretty much everything around where he was sitting to drink. In fact, Cal was probably #1 on the blacklist for Western City bars. He did not respond to the owner's greeting and just threw a gold coin at him. "Bring a bottle of my usual." "Oh, and roasted chicken breast. Don't put salt on it." "Excuse me? Why, you don't want to find a seat first?" Cal started to frown. The owner immediately waved his hands and bowed his head. "Immediately. I will bring it immediately." The owner was moving quickly, but it looked like he was smiling. It was because it looked like Cal was not planning on sitting down. Cal looked around the bar that became quiet once he walked in. Everyone was avoiding his gaze and turned their heads. It was like they were wondering why he had to choose this bar of all bars in the city. The gangsters and scammers in the bar were all extremely nervous right now. Tusk. The sound of Cal clicking his tongue could be heard through the silence in the bar. "Young master, here is the bottle you requested." "Great." Cal grabbed the bottle and bag of chicken. It was the alcohol he drank often. It was probably the most expensive alcohol in this bar. He accepted the bottle with no regret and left the bar. Cal immediately opened the bottle and drank about half of it as soon as he stepped out of the bar. Oh, the alcohol tasted pretty good. Since Cal had a high tolerance to alcohol, it did not affect him at all to drink half of the bottle at once. He just flushed easily, making people think he was a lightweight. Cal quickly walked along with the bottle in his hand. He walked back past the tea shop he stayed in all day until he saw the guards stiffen up after seeing him. Seeing them acting like that made him want to go out of the gate, but unfortunately, that was not his destination. "Ah, I'm starting to get hot." Cal felt himself heating up as he continued to drink. He walked a bit further until he reached the city wall not too far away. The tall city wall that started at the gate seemed to defend against any potential intruders. Well, it depends on the person. Cal recalled the information from the book. Approximately 100 steps from the city gate. That was the location where Choi Han jumped over the city wall. Cal clenched the bottle in his hand as he quickly ran toward the location. There were not many people on the streets because it was the residential area. Cal took a deep breath once he arrived at the calculated location, exactly 100 steps away from the city gate. It was a corner of the residential area, so there wasn't any other light other than the torch the guards put on top of the wall, as well as the lights coming out of the residential windows. But that was enough light. Cal slowly approached his destination after letting his eyes adjust to the dark. Just as I expected, he could see something curled up underneath the city wall. Actually, there were multiple things, delicate-looking things that were shaking because of the cold. Cal continued to walk toward the location. He could hear the voices of the curled-up life forms. Meow, meow. 2 cats were meowing as they lay curled up underneath the city wall. Cal started to smile. It's right here. He found the right spot. The moment Choi Han jumps over the wall, a baby kitten is body slammed by the alpha cat of the neighborhood and gets sent tumbling to the city wall. Choi Han quickly twists his body to avoid landing on the kitten. This was a world where coincidences played a big role. He really is a good guy. Choi Han twists his ankle after unexpectedly twisting his body to avoid hurting the kitten. He had run like crazy to reach Western City after killing tens of people for the first time and burying the corpses of the villagers. His body had reached its limit, making him unable to land properly after making such a movement. Meow, meow. Cal gazed at the kitten that was curled up and shaking, as well as the other kitten that seemed to be its sibling licking the shaking kitten. He then turned his gaze. He turned to look at one of the alleys that was close to where I was standing. He could see him. I found him, the man who was wincing in pain while looking like one of the homeless that lived in the slums. Cal could see the shaggy black hair and the old and burnt clothes. According to the novel, Cal and Choi Han would meet tomorrow. Tonight was the night Cal got drunk and got the scar on his side. Things were already different than in the novel, even though it was just minor details. Cal stood up as he had crouched down to look at the kittens. Choi Han must have felt his gaze from a few moments ago, as Choi Han slowly raised his head and his eyes focused on Cal through his shaggy black hair. Damn it, I'm shaking. Cal could hear his heart going crazy. Although it was too dark to see clearly, Choi Han's eyes that Cal could see through his hair were extremely cold. Cal thought that it was a good idea that he chose to drink. Cal congratulated himself for making such a smart decision and calmed himself down as much as possible. Jab. He needed to launch a jab and leave a good first impression. Cal took a deep breath as he started to speak to Choi Han, who was staring at him. You look like you are hungry. Tusk, tusk. Cal clicked his tongue and took the chicken breast out of the bag. Then, with an extremely gentle movement, Cal offered the roasted chicken breast not to Choi Han, but to the kittens. You poor things. Go ahead and eat it. Cal didn't know that the kittens would be this small. He hoped that they could still eat the chicken breast. Tusk. He clicked his tongue as he ripped the chicken breast into pieces so that the kittens could eat it better. He was wondering what the hell he was doing crouching here feeding these kittens. To be honest, Cal did not like cats. However, Choi Han treasured small animals, growl. The injured kitten must have understood Cal's dislike for cats as it showed its teeth and started to growl, but Cal started to pet the kitten's silver fur as he looked into its golden eyes. The kitten must not have liked it, as it did its best to avoid Cal's hand. You poor things. Eat this and get better soon. He didn't even look at Choi Han when he said that, however. He was thinking that Choi Han was definitely looking at him. Do you have somewhere to go? He did not hear a response. However, Cal continued to speak. The guards would soon come to patrol this area, and he needed to make a move before Choi Han started to limp away to avoid the guards. Or a place to stay? Cal petted the growling silver-furred kitten with golden eyes and pushed away the red kitten that was trying to attack him as he asked. The red kitten kept trying to hit Cal for some reason. Its golden eyes that matched its sibling's eyes shined brightly even in the darkness, but Cal needed to focus on Choi Han. Are you hungry? There still was no response. Cal had expected this. Choi Han was probably observing him right now, but he also probably wanted to rest. Both his body and mind had reached their limit. In addition, he had received a huge shock just the other day. For someone like Choi Han, who had lived on his own without any human contact other than the villagers of that small village, Western City was completely foreign to him. He may have lived for tens of years already, but he was still young. Are you not going to say anything? Why are you talking to me? Choi Han finally seemed to have decided that Cal was weak. Cal was weak enough that he could easily kill him even though he was at his limits. That was why Choi Han felt that it would be okay to accept Cal's goodwill even though he had no idea why Cal was being nice to him. Cal stood up and walked toward Choi Han. The guards would soon come patrolling through this location. Hey. He could see Choi Han's situation better once he got closer. He was a mess. However, maybe it was because he was the main character, but his eyes were clear. The black hair and black pupils that showed that Choi Han was Korean were actually quite nice to see. That was why Cal smiled as he casually spoke to Choi Han. "Follow me. I'll feed you." The best first impression was to be the one who provides delicious food. Chapter 7. They met 4. Choi Han stopped leaning against the wall and pushed his body up. His body was leaning to his left probably because his right ankle was uncomfortable, but Cal did not help him or say anything about him. There was no reason to be any nicer to him than he had already been. Cal told Choi Han to follow him as he headed toward the Count's estate. However, an existence blocked his path. Meow. The red-furred, golden-eyed kitten ran toward Cal and rubbed its cheeks on Cal's shoes. Cal started to frown. He didn't like cats, but this one seemed pretty cute. However, he suddenly felt chills all over his body and turned around. Choi Han was staring at him. Damn it. Cal awkwardly started to pet the kitten. "It seems like it likes me, but I have to go. See you next time." Cal never understood why people talked to animals. However, Cal, who had now become that person that was speaking to animals, quickly stood back up and walked away from the kitten. Grrrwool. The silver-furred, golden-eyed kitten growled as if it was telling the red-furred kitten to come back while telling Cal to get lost. The red-furred kitten seemed to not want to go back as it continued to look back at Cal as it walked away. However, Cal did not turn back. Meow, mew. The sad cries of the kittens were getting farther away. Cal took a peek backwards. Choi Han was limping but keeping up with him. They made eye contact once more. Cal flinched as he quickly turned his head back. He was walking slowly to make it easier for Choi Han to keep up. They passed the residential area and Cal took another sip of the alcohol, the bars. Market. Plaza. They then passed the residences of the wealthy and finally arrived at the Count's estate located in the rear of the city. "What are you doing?" Cal looked toward Choi Han, who had stopped moving. Choi Han must have seen how the soldiers greeted Cal, as well as how the citizens avoided him on their way here. Choi Han was probably questioning whether it really would be easy to kill Cal. Cal asked once more. "Are you not going to come?" As expected, Choi Han resumed walking. His reason for following Cal now was probably to get some information as well as to host the funeral for the villagers of Harris Village. "Why, young master?" As soon as Cal stood at the main entrance of the estate, the guards and knights stumbled over their words as they greeted him. Sigh. I wish they would stop with that "why, young master" business. It was odd hearing them stumbling over their words every time. Since he possessed the body of a trash, he was trying his best to act like one. It was easier to be a trash young master than a noble young master. He was trying to make his life as easy as possible. Cal frowned at the guards' stumbling of words while the guards quickly opened the gate. "Please head on in." Cal turned back to look at Choi Han. The rest of them looked at Choi Han as well. They were probably curious about this beggar that followed their young master back. The knights observed Choi Han with suspicion in their eyes. "Follow me." Choi Han should know of Cal's status by now. He continued to limp as he approached Cal. Cal looked calm and turned back as soon as he saw that Choi Han was behind him and entered through the gate. But his heart was going crazy. "I'm sure he's thinking about taking me as a hostage if something dangerous happens. That is probably why he stood right behind me." He was sure that Choi Han would not kill him. However, just thinking about being taken as hostage caused serious mental strain that Cal frowned as he looked at the 2 knights who were following them. "Don't follow me." The knights flinched at Cal's clear order. They looked back and forth between Cal and Choi Han before one of the knights approached Choi Han and Cal with a stiff expression on his face. The knights cared about their creed more than anything else. It was fitting of the knights that Daruth treasured. Well, I guess they have to act like this to be good knights. Cal was satisfied at the knight's response to this beggar-like foreigner and left the knight alone to follow them. He just led Choi Han to the entrance of the Count's residence. "Young master, you're back." "Yes, Ron." This scary old man. He had been waiting for Cal outside the door. Cal didn't expect him to really be waiting. Cal was scared but thought that it was actually for the better. Ron's gaze turned toward Choi Han and his benign smile suddenly stiffened. Ron should be at a level where he can estimate Choi Han's strength. Choi Han also stared back at Ron. Cal didn't care what kind of attacks they were sending each other through their eyes and did what he needed to do. He was not done just yet. "Follow me." Cal called out to Choi Han once more and started to walk. The servant, Ron, quickly followed Cal. "Young master, what is going on? I will take care of this guest if you tell me what is needed." "No need." Someone else approached Cal as Ron was speaking. "Young master, you returned after drinking today." It was the deputy butler, Ainz. "Ah, he was responsible for me." Cal clicked his tongue and ignored Ainz's statement. Instead, he lifted up the alcohol bottle and pointed toward Ainz. It was at that moment. Arak. Ainz covered his face with both of his arms as he curled up. Silence filled the air. Tusk. Cal clicked his tongue and Ainz looked up with a face completely red from embarrassment as he looked back at Cal. "Put this away." "Yes." Ainz received the alcohol bottle from Cal with a blank expression on his face. "I will actually throw it at you next time." Ainz turned pale at Cal's words. Cal did not seem to care at all as he continued to walk. With the inclusion of Ainz, there were now a total of 4 people following him. Cal peeked every so often to make sure they were following him properly and arrived at his destination, Kitchen Hash 2. Cal pushed the door open as soon as he saw the sign. "Young master?" He could hear Ainz's confused voice behind him. However, there was a thick smile on Cal's face. The end was near. Now Beacrox and Choi Han will meet. Cal's heart was beating fast. The door easily opened. Cal's expression stiffened at the scene in front of him inside the door. Clang. Clang. Second Chef Beacrox was smiling while sharpening his blade. He seemed to be enjoying himself while sharpening his blade all alone in Kitchen Hash 2. However, that smile disappeared as soon as he saw Cal. That was why Cal was scared. It was always scary to deal with lunatics. You never knew what crazy things a lunatic would do. Cal made a move before Beacrox could respond. He put a hand on Choi Han's shoulder and pointed at him. "Give him something to eat." "Excuse me?" Beacrox asked with a stiff expression on his face. The sharp blade in his hand was shining as it reflected the light. Cal calmed his shaking heart as he said it once more. "Give him something to eat. He's hungry." "Ho!" The knight let out a shocked noise from the back, but Cal did not have the time to pay attention to that right now. He waited for Beacrox's response with anxiety. Finally, Beacrox answered with a stiff expression still on his face. "I will do as you instructed, young master." It was done. Beacrox and Choi Han, and even Ron, someone that he did not expect. The 3 of them were connected now. A bright smile formed on Cal's face. He could finally relax as he gave Beacrox another order with a slightly higher tone. "Also prepare something for me. I'm hungry." Cal thought about the steak from last night's dinner. "Your steak last night was the best. You are a great chef." The tip of Beacrox's knife slightly shook. "Something like that steak would be a wonderful meal. Prepare it quickly." Cal turned around without waiting for Beacrox's response. He then left the kitchen and headed towards his chamber. The knight and Ainz followed him, and Ainz quickly asked, "What should I do about that guest?" "I guess he is my guest. You take care of it." Since he connected the 3 of them, he didn't want to deal with anything else for today. Beacrox and Ron should be able to tell Choi Han's strength. In the novel, Beacrox originally swears his loyalty to Choi Han because of his strength, so he should pledge his loyalty after figuring out Choi Han's strength this time too. Of course, Cal had some other plans in the case that Beacrox was unable to determine Choi Han's strength. All Cal had to do was make Choi Han beat someone or something up without it being him. Oh, and Beacrox had to be there to watch, even if it might have some holes. Cal had thought about a lot of different things. "Ainz, stop annoying me and just bring the meal over to my chamber when it's ready." As expected, Ron did not follow him. Cal left the knight and Hands outside his chamber door as he closed the door and laid down on the bed. He was happy. His exhaustion and the alcohol made him fall asleep before the food ever showed up. That was why he did not know that Beecrox's cooking knife slashed toward Choi Han's neck, and that Ron's sharp dagger was flung toward Choi Han's heart. Of course, both of their attacks had failed. Well, this was actually a situation that nobody, other than the three involved individuals, would know about. Chapter 8. Picked it up late at night. Deputy Butler Hands had to stand in front of Count Daruth. He started to make his report while Daruth quietly listened until he was finished. He is currently sleeping in his room. Hands finally finished his report, and Daruth started to speak. The driver reported that he went to the Flynn Merchant Guild's illegitimate son's tea shop. Today, he brought a young man whose identity we cannot verify. In terms of drinking, he only drank a little bit and kept a clear head. Hans's report was short, but Daruth found that short report interesting. Should we put a tail on him? He waved his hand to oppose Hans's question. He didn't want to know what his son was doing on the outside to the point he would put a tail on him. No need. As long as he is in the city, anything he does is under my authority to handle. Daruth cherished Hands the most out of all the young deputy butlers. It was because he fulfilled orders well and was a good person. Do what you have been doing in terms of observing Cal inside the house and reporting what you see. I understand. Hands did not say anything else as he bowed his head. Daruth. He was someone who did not have any special abilities nor any solid networks. However, just like the previous count, he was able to rule over the Hennetus territory and grow his wealth by selling marble and wine. He was someone who was able to protect his territory properly. Cal has changed. Cal felt different than normal. It wasn't that he suddenly got smarter or stronger, but that his actions were clearly different from before. Ah, Hands. Yes, Count Nim. Bring me some information about the Flynn Merchant Guild. Tea shop owner Billows. Daruth knew about this bastard son of the Flynn Merchant Guild. This was because the Hennetus's largest trading partner for wine was the Flynn Merchant Guild. I will get right on it. Great. Daruth watched Hands walk out of his office as he started to think. There was a lot of things for him to think about other than the change in Cal's demeanor. The atmosphere around the continent was dangerous. It was like a volcano right before it erupts. Daruth could clearly feel the dangerous atmosphere despite the fact that he was in the corner of the kingdom. It was because he was always receiving an endless amount of information about it. But the message from the imperial court that he received today made Daruth even more certain about the current atmosphere of the continent. The former counts of the Hennetus territory always passed on a single piece of advice to the next in power. There is no need to be recorded in history. Just live for peace and happiness. I guess I need to reinforce the city walls. He may not be a good fighter, but Daruth was always thinking about ways to protect himself and his family. There are times when the body is stronger than the mind. Young master, you were sleeping so soundly that I did not wake you up. Cal had slept in. The fact that Ron brought lemonade instead of cold water again made things even worse. However, Cal could not say anything about it. It was because there was a bandage around Ron's neck. Are you hurt? Are you worrying about me? No, it's just annoying to look at. It is nothing much. I was just scratched by a cat's claw. Is a cat another reference to an innocent person? Cal was sure that someone would have had their fated meeting last night. He avoided the gaze of Ron, who was smiling, and headed toward the chamber's window. He needed to move faster because he slept in. Will you be heading out right away? Yes, I'll take care of everything on my own outside. I understand. Oh, young master. Cal let go of the door handle and turned to look at Ron. Ron had an odd smile on his face. What do you think about the lemonade? Great, it's delicious. Ron's voice became an octave lower. Is that so? Yes. What kind of question was that? Since Ron was someone he could not ignore, Cal just answered the question as nicely as possible while opening the door. Slam. He then quickly closed it right back. Ron. Ron approached Cal at his calling and whispered with a smile on his face. Young master, were you surprised? Your guest from yesterday is waiting for you outside. Cal was surprised. Cal had seen Choi Han staring at him as soon as he opened the door, which caused him to close the door in shock. His hand headed to the inner pocket of his shirt. The 10 million gallons in his pocket calmed him down. Ron gazed toward Cal as he continued to speak. I didn't have a chance to tell you because you opened the door right away. I told him to wait comfortably in his room, but he insisted that he needed to see you and waited outside the door. Didn't have a chance to tell me, my ass. Cal could not say anything to this terrible old man who definitely had the chance, but chose not to tell him. Cal moved a step away from Ron as he opened the door again. What's going on? Cal pretended like he never slammed the door as he started to chat with Choi Han. He was paying attention to Choi Han's appearance as he asked. After taking a shower, fixing his hair, and wearing new clothes, a pure and clean feeling was coming from Choi Han. However, it was difficult to think like that after seeing his eyes. Choi Han was still in a twisted state. That was why looking at his eyes made Cal feel a bit scared. Choi Han was also staring back at Cal before finally starting to speak. Pay you back. Huh? I will pay you back for the meal. Choi Han was speaking formally, unlike yesterday. More importantly, Cal started to frown at the words, pay you back, pay me back. Is he trying to make me have a heart attack? Who in their right mind would use Choi Han for manual labor? Cal just wanted Choi Han to get out of this city as soon as possible. Of course, Choi Han would agree to help Cal out if he said it was to pay him back. He was that kind of person. However, Cal didn't have anything he needed from Choi Han. No need. Is there anything else you need? He quickly rejected Choi Han's offer and asked if there was anything else he needed. Choi Han started to observe Cal even more closely. That gaze made Cal think about how Cal got beaten to a pulp in the novel, and his arms started to develop goosebumps. Choi Han started to speak at that point. There is something I would like to request for your help. Cal closed his eyes at the word help. He did not want to get involved with Choi Han. The help that Choi Han would ask about could be nothing other than something regarding Harris Village. The Cal in the novel called the villagers of Harris Village useless, and ended up getting beaten up because of it. Cal thought about that as he opened his mouth. Tell Hans your request. He will take care of everything. After opening his eyes again, Cal made eye contact with Choi Han, who was standing there as still as a statue. He is a talented deputy butler. He will be able to help you out with almost any normal request. Cal then put a hand on Ron's shoulder. He could feel Ron flinch, but Cal decided to get both of them out of his sight at the same time. Ron here is pretty useful as well. He will also be able to help you out. Ron, he is my guest. Make sure to take proper care of whatever he needs. Cal also gave Ron an order before moving his hand off of Ron's shoulder. He then heard Choi Han calling out to him. But you don't even know who I am. Cal turned around to look. He could see Choi Han still observing him. The scary feeling emitting from him had disappeared, and Cal could only feel an unexplainable purity coming from Choi Han. Why do I need to know who you are? Is there a reason to help someone who does not have as much as I have? Choi Han started to frown a bit at Cal's words. It was very faint, but Cal, who had been closely observing Choi Han, definitely saw it. Is he annoyed that I said someone who does not have as much as I do? Cal quickly continued on. Based on your situation, I doubt you'll ask for something difficult. Well, if it is something difficult, I'm sure Hans will know where to draw the line. He pushed Ron toward Choi Han as he turned away from the two of them. Then goodbye, I have a lot of things to do. Cal quickly headed toward his father Daruth's office. He needed to get a large amount of allowance today. He could hear Ron's voice coming from his behind him. Young master, I will do as you commanded. I don't care whether you do or do not. Frying and stirring was for them to do as the main characters, not Cal. Wouldn't they get closer to each other faster since they met 4 days earlier thanks to him? Ron looked toward Cal, who was moving away from the both of them, before looking down at the empty cup in his hands. Interesting. That fearless puppy did not like sour things. He still did not like it. However, he now drank it. Ron touched his neck. He had been hurt for the first time in a long time, but something more interesting than the injury kept nagging at him. The fearless puppy was scared of him. Does he know something? Lead the way. Ron turned his gaze toward the source of the voice. He could see Choi Han looking at him with disgust. This punk seemed to have figured out that he was someone who was killed after their short spar last night. Sure, this punk, who also gave off a similar scent of blood, was pretending to be clean. Ron found it funny that such a twisted punk was acting that way. This punk, that they met last night, gave off the violent, disgusting, and murderous aura of the Forest of Darkness. It was an aura that, and Ron and Beecrox could instantly tell apart from other auras. Of course, that murderous aura was not Choi Han's own. Choi Han had gotten that aura from the assassins he had killed, and now that he had showered and cleaned up, the murderous aura was no longer surrounding him. I guess there is no way those people would cross over. Ron thought about the events of last night as he started to talk to the boy who seemed to have gone through a lot in the past few days. Follow me. Ron started to walk in order to follow his puppy young master's order, and Choi Han followed behind him. Choi Han's gaze momentarily headed toward Cal's direction before turning back to Ron. Chapter 9. Picked it up too. Cal held a bag that was twice the size of yesterday's bag as he headed back up to the top of the slums. The two siblings were there to greet him once again. The children kept their mouths shut as they looked toward Cal. Cal smiled as he took out two small bags and pushed them toward the children. Take it. The young girl slowly approached him. Cal frowned as he watched the girl with coarse gray hair approach him. She had a hand on her side as she limped over to him. Hey, Cal pushed the two bags toward the young boy. You come here and take it. The young boy quickly rushed over and snatched the bags before quickly running back. Compared to Cal's bright red hair, the boy had coarse dark red hair that shook as he ran. Cal then turned around and headed toward the man-eating tree. Wow, it's not bread. It's meat and cake. He could hear the siblings talking about the food, but he did not care. He continued to walk toward the man-eating tree's territory. Ooh, it's a bit scary. The black tree, without any leaves, seemed to be moving its branches to welcome Cal. This eerie feeling made Cal nervous, but he still poured the contents of the bag into the hole underneath the tree. The bread quickly disappeared. It was at that moment. More, give me more. It's driving me crazy. The response he read about in the novel showed up. It was the voice of a weak girl. Yes, the person who starved to death was a priestess who served a god. However, unlike the present-day priestesses of the temples or churches, the ancient priestesses were shamans. The majority of the ancient shamans could be considered people who had superpowers or natural forces under their command. Cal quickly grabbed the bag and started to move. Cal, come to my study tonight. That was what his father, Daruth, had said to Cal when he went to get some allowance. That was why he had to leave here before evening at the latest. He came here with the intention of taking care of half of the gluttony of the tree today. He went back down the hill to get more bread. He could see the two siblings looking at him with cake on their lips. Tusk. Cal frowned and clicked his tongue as he walked past the two siblings. Cal then walked to the street where there were a lot of bakeries. He had already swept the stock of the bakery he went to yesterday this morning, so it would take them some time to restock. That was why he needed to look for another bakery. It was at that moment. Why, young master? A woman's voice made Cal turn his head. A middle-aged woman smiled awkwardly as she pointed to her shop. Her hand was shaking and she was full of fear, but she still had some confidence. We have a lot of bread. Cal started to smile. Now this was a woman who knew how to do business. The other vendors were peeking their way while looking at what was going on. Cal threw her a gold coin and the woman quickly picked it up. Give me everything you have. Pack it quickly. In that instant, the smile on the middle-aged woman's face grew wider. She instantly went into the store and immediately came back out with a large bag full of bread. She had already packed it all up in advance. Here it is, young master. Wow, she really is a good merchant. This was someone who knew how to make money. I can also prepare some more. Cal liked this woman even more. However, at that instant, young master, we can make even more bread than that. An old man across the street raised his hand as he rushed over. He was wearing a baker's uniform. Cal liked his fitting outfit and threw a gold coin to him as well. I will head to your shop next. Have a bag ready. Thank you very much. Cal was amazed by these vendors. They were still afraid of him because of his identity as the trash of the Count's family, but they had no issues coming up to him to make some easy money. It was probably because they knew that Cal did not hit anybody who was not a gangster, but he still could see why the Hennetus territory was doing so well. The fact that Cal had spent a gold coin to buy a bag of bread yesterday had already spread like wildfire. 1,000,000 gallons. The others gasped at the week's worth of profit while their eyes started to sparkle. I can go around to those 3 places tomorrow to get bread. Since he gave each of them a gold coin, he should be able to get another bag from them tomorrow. Cal was happy that things were going so smoothly. However, there was someone who was watching him from afar. Him. It was the chef, Becrox. Just like his father, he had a bandage around his neck, and he was watching Cal from behind a corner. He just watched Cal buy the bag of bread and some medicinal herbs before heading back to the slums. Did he go crazy? Cal seemed like he had gone crazy since yesterday. Becrox had never cared about Cal, even when his father had said that Cal was an interesting kid. But the more he saw, the more he started to agree. It felt like it would be just as fun to watch Cal as it was to watch the black-haired punk. Becrox's eyes started to sparkle. Billows, the owner of the tea shop with the highest view, took a sip of his tea as he received his subordinate's report. Young Master Cal is going in and out of the slums. Yes, Billows Nim. I see. We also received communication from the capital. Is that so? Billows's round eyes, that were hard to see because of his fat, opened widely. The subordinate flinched for a moment before continuing his report. Yes, it mentioned that the Crown will soon gather people. That is why they wish for Billows Nim to return and get to work. Clank. Billows put the teacup on the table as he motioned with his chin. You can head out now. The subordinate quickly moved into the shadows and disappeared. Billows stared at the spot his subordinate was standing in as one corner of his lips twisted upward. They think I will be their dog and watch the house again. His gaze headed out of the window. It felt like his gaze could reach the far-away capital. This isn't bread, isn't bread. And seeing the young girl who was mumbling, isn't bread, over and over as she held the medicinal herbs in her hand, Cal just snorted as he headed back to the man-eating tree. However, the young boy got in his way. You cannot die. It was the young boy saying he cannot die now. Cal did not even frown as he just walked past the young boy. Cal, no, Kim Rock-Soo. He was an orphan and didn't have anything to his name. That was why there were a lot of people who showed the poor Kim Rock-Soo a lot of sympathy. Is there a reason to show sympathy for the needy? That was something he heard all the time when he was younger. Young beggar. Poor orphan. You don't need a reason to show sympathy. There was a time he just took that at face value, but he started to understand the real meaning of it as he got older. There wasn't a logical reason for the things your heart draws you to do. You didn't need a reason. So annoying. Cal hated to see young children being hurt. However, he didn't have any thoughts about nursing the young girl nor thoughts of consoling her. He frowned toward the young girl who was limping toward him and the young boy next to her as he answered them. I won't die. The siblings finally stopped following him once he said that. Cal was unhappy at the thought that he did something he hated the most. He hated people who got involved in other people's business without being asked, but he had done just that by giving the young girl the medicinal herbs. Ooh, more, give me more. Yes, eat it all. Cal dumped the whole bag into the man-eating tree without caring about how it landed. He was not afraid. The bread instantly disappeared into the darkness that was now too light to be called darkness. Cal could now see a new gray light. However, it would only seem gray to him. I guess it is paying off for the money I spent. Cal poured the other bag of bread into the hole as he headed back home. He didn't see the siblings anymore, but that was better for Cal. However, he saw the 2 struggling cats on his way back home and flinched. It's the cats from yesterday. They shouldn't remember me, right? Silver fur and golden eyes, dark red fur and golden eyes. The 2 cats did not even meow as they stared at Cal. Cal did not want to cause a scene and just looked away as he headed back home. He then heard something from his father that almost made him faint. Could you please say that one more time? Yes, Cal. Basin was standing next to Cal as well. The story of the Hennetus family that was not mentioned in the novel was happening in front of Cal's eyes. You shall go to the capital as our family's representative. Cal could feel a headache coming. Originally, Basin was supposed to go. However, you are the firstborn of our family. Cal just opened and closed his mouth repeatedly as he watched Count Daruth sitting there with a gentle smile, going to visit the crown at such a time. Cal was quickly thinking about the contents of the birth of a hero as Daruth continued to speak. The crown is hosting a big event, and the noble families of each territory have been invited to gather. It will be your first time to go visit the crown, but Basin has been going to similar functions for the last 2 years. However, I am hoping for you to go this time. Big event hosted by the crown. That made Cal think about a single incident, the Plaza Terror incident. A secret organization commits a terrorist act when many of the citizens of the capital are gathered in one place. Our hero Choi Han is the one who manages to block about half of their plot. That would be the 4th time that Choi Han and the secret organization would come into contact with each other. As a result, Choi Han is able to save a lot of the citizens at the plaza and becomes connected with the Crown Prince. They then quickly develop a friendship with each other. Cal suddenly got the chills. Since the novel described the event from Choi Han's point of view, it did not talk much about the gathering of the nobles. All it mentioned was that Choi Han gained some party members before and after the incident, as well as the strong backing of the Crown Prince. But he had to go to the scene of that terrorist attack. Of course, he did not know whether the nobles would gather in the plaza as well. Cal started to recall the information in The Birth of a Hero. Tons of people were gathered in the plaza. The platform was still empty. It was for the royal family that would soon arrive. Choi Han could see some other people who looked like they held important positions. However, more important to Choi Han was the fact that a lot of citizens, young, old, male, female, were gathered here. Choi Han's heart started to beat faster. He did not want to see a group of innocent people dying ever again. Would people who looked like they held important positions include the nobles? Cal turned to look at Basin even as his father was continuing to speak. Basin stood there stoically, looking at his father without giving Cal a single glance. Daruth said Basin normally goes to events like this. Should I tell him to go? Cal's mouth continued to repeatedly open and close. He did not want to go to a dangerous area. However, he could not bring himself to say Basin's name, a relationship that was neither good nor bad. That was the relationship between the original Cal and Basin. Basin found Cal to be difficult, but that was it. Cal's mind started to get complicated. Would Cal have gone in the story? There was no way Daruth would send the trash to the capital. Just why was he trying to send him then? Cal was wondering if he had done something wrong to have caused this to happen. You will leave in 5 days. 5 days later. Hearing Daruth say that, Cal knew that the Cal in the novel had not gone to the capital. In the novel, he was beaten to a pulp by Choi Han 4 days later and carried into the Count's estate. There was no way he could go to the capital in that condition. Cal. Before Basin started to do it, you had participated in all of these ceremonies. Think back on those times and have a relaxed journey. Father. Daruth looked toward Cal at his calling. Basin slowly turned to look at his older brother as well. I am a bit anxious because of this sudden development. I have not gone to any of these since 2 years ago. I don't understand why I would suddenly have to go. Please let me think about it. Daruth agreed and told his 2 sons that they could leave. The siblings quickly left the study. Cal was busy thinking about all sorts of things. If Cal threw a fit and caused a scene, Daruth would probably send Basin, but that would leave a bitter taste in his mouth. It was at that moment. Hi, young Nim. Cal could hear his young brother Basin's voice. Cal turned his head. He could see Basin still stoically walking without looking at him. The 15-year-old Basin always talked like this without ever making eye contact. Hi, young Nim. There is no reason you cannot go. Sigh. Cal let out a sigh. Basin did not even look at Cal as he left the study and headed to his own room. Cal stared at Basin for a long time. It's not supposed to go like this. Cal had been pushed out of the successor spot. Cal could not stop acting like trash even when his younger brother flat out acted like he was the family's successor since 2 years ago. He was the joke of the family. That was why there were a lot of reasons he should not go as the family representative to the Crown's summon. However, Basin was saying that there were no reasons not to go to the event. Basin was saying that there were enough reasons for Cal to go as the family representative. Things will become complicated like this. Cal stated to frown. He did not like how things were going, but the other problem was, it's worth a shot. He thought it was worth going through the events that were about to come up. The reason was that the chances of Cal coming back without dying or getting hurt were pretty high. It will also make it difficult for me if Basin dies without being able to take the Count position. In order for Cal to live a peaceful life, Basin needed to survive. There was still their youngest sister, Lily, but she was too young. Furthermore, Cal needed to head out of Western City after taking the ancient power located at the man-eating tree in order to take some other ancient powers located outside the Hennetus territory. The scale inside Cal's mind started to tilt. He started to stare at Deputy Butler Ainz, who was heading his way. Ainz's expression was intense, but not dark. He seemed to be a bit bitter, but his eyes were clear. "Young master, the request that your guest has asked for Ainz." Cal cut him off as he said something else. "Bring that guest here." "Excuse me?" Cal was not going to be pushed around. If he was going to have to move, he might as well do it in a way that was most comfortable for him and in a way that was most beneficial for him. If he doesn't want to come, just tell him this. Based on Ainz's expression, Cal was certain that Choi Han's issue was settled properly. In the novel, Count Daruth gave a proper funeral for the villagers and took care of everything even after Choi Han beat Cal to a pulp. That shouldn't have changed at all. Payment? Pardon? Tell him to come because a way for him to pay me back has come up. Chapter 10. Picked it up 3. Deputy Butler Ainz immediately ordered another servant to call Choi Han over. Where is he right now? He is with Ron in Chef Beecrox's kitchen. Cal's heart jumped as he walked into the study. Were the three of them getting along as expected? Based on what I've been told, he is learning how to cook basic dishes from Chef Beecrox. Cooking? Yes. One corner of Cal's lips went up. Cooking my ass. They were calling it cooking, but he was probably learning about torturing or Beecrox, and Ron were admiring Choi Han's sword skill. Cal didn't need to see it to know the truth. Cal naturally walked over and sat down at his desk. He then casually asked Ainz, who was idly standing in the corner. What did he ask for? Ainz seemed shocked at Cal's sudden words before quickly putting on a serious expression and started to report. It was the information Cal expected it to be. Ainz could not hide his sorrow and disappointment while sharing about what happened to Harris Village, and had gone to the Count with Choi Han to deliver the village chief's plaque that Choi Han brought. Father met with him? Yes. The Count immediately ordered for a funeral and will be sending inspectors, knights, and soldiers to investigate. Ainz stopped for a moment and hesitated before continuing to speak. However, the guest has indicated he will not be going back with us. Ainz recalled meeting the Count with Choi Han, as Choi Han explained the situation to the Count. Choi Han was speaking normally, but the tips of his fingers were shaking. It was then that Ainz found out that Choi Han was 17 years old. He was able to keep his life because he happened to be searching for medicinal herbs on his own at the time of the massacre, but he still had to watch his neighbors and friends all being killed at such a young age. Just how much shock would he have received? Will that be okay? That was why Ainz had asked Cal, will it be okay for him to not say his final farewell? It is his decision. Cal answered Ainz's question and changed the topic. He already knew why Choi Han did not want to return. He had already said his goodbye as he buried them. All that was left was to get his revenge on the people that took their future away. Has Ron been taking care of him? Yes, he has made sure that the guest eats every meal. He has also been very friendly with him. The three of them did indeed seem to be getting along. Ainz seemed to have remembered something as he continued to speak. Mr. Ron seems to have hurt himself while working again. He had bandages around his wrist. Really? Make sure to give him some medicine. He probably killed someone again. That was what Cal was thinking. He heard Ainz's voice at that time. I will make sure to deliver young master's words and feelings to Mr. Ron. Sure, whatever. Ainz opened his mouth to say something as he looked at Cal's nonchalant expression, but a different noise filled the study. Knock, knock, knock. Choi Han had arrived. Ainz opened the door, and Cal could see Choi Han standing outside. Cal waved his hand to send Ainz away, and Ainz bowed his head as he quietly exited the study. Only Cal and Choi Han were left in the room. Cal kept the desk between them as he pointed at the chair across from him. Come sit down. Choi Han slowly looked around the study as he sat down on the chair. Cal gave him enough time to look around the study. Like a typical pure and smart hero, Choi Han liked books. That was why the first thing he did after coming out of the Forest of Darkness and arriving in Harris Village was to learn how to read from the chief. After looking around for a long time, Choi Han's gaze finally landed on Cal. What is the payment? Getting right to the point. Cal smiled, looking at how Choi Han didn't beat around the bush. Payment. Choi Han was thorough when it came to debts he owed. Cal Kim Rok-soo realized that he had changed the contents of the beginning of the birth of a hero. He could see that even more things would change because of it. That was why he was trying his best to not change too many things, but he had to go to the capital. Then even more things will change. Cal put a piece of paper on the desk as he looked toward Choi Han. There is a way for you to pay back for the meal, but I need to first determine whether you will be capable of doing it. In simple terms, this is an interview. Please go ahead. Choi Han immediately agreed to Cal's talk of checking his qualifications. Cal started to ask. You know how to protect people? What do you mean? Choi Han flinched for the first time and asked after a moment. Cal's gaze started to turn sharp. He was looking at the piece of paper on the desk and not at Choi Han. Although he had to quickly change the plan, it might bring him more gains than before. He could prevent Choi Han's party from getting the ancient powers while taking the ones that he needs for himself. Those powers were useless to them anyways. Cal kept his gaze on the paper as he continued to speak. Simple. Are you capable of protecting people instead of killing people? Silence filled the room. Choi Han did not have an answer. Cal removed his gaze from the paper and looked at the person sitting on the chair. Choi Han was sitting there with his head down, but eventually answered. I am not sure. Tusk. Cal clicked his tongue. This was why it was dangerous to provoke Choi Han right now. But you can kill someone? The answer came easily this time. Absolutely. Then you should be able to protect people as well. Choi Han's eyes shook for a moment. That is difficult. But difficult does not mean impossible. There were not many things in the world you could avoid because it was difficult. The life that Cal had lived was like that. That was why he was so happy to possess the body of a trash like Cal who could do whatever he wants. But, unfortunately, there was now a mountain he needed to first climb in order to have that damn peaceful future. Cal was looking for someone to climb and flip that mountain for him. Choi Han had a bitter smile on his face. I guess that's true. Yes, it is. Now the final interview question. Yes, please ask. Cal looked into Choi Han's firm gaze as he asked the last question. What is your name? You don't know my name, of course I do. You're the person who was going to beat me up. I have heard from other people, but I want to hear it directly from you. Choi Han. Choi Han reached his hand out. My name is Choi Han. Cal shook Choi Han's hand. Great, I am Cal Henatus. The short conversation called an interview quickly finished. Of course, it was a passing grade. Cal pushed the paper on the desk toward Choi Han. The way you can pay me back is simple. There were 2 names written on the paper. It also indicated where he would meet them. Go to the capital with these people. These were the party members Choi Han would meet on his way to the capital. Beecrocs and these 2 people would grow and get strong with Choi Han until Volume 5, Rosalind and Locke. One was the princess of a neighboring kingdom who was returning to her kingdom after surviving an assassination attempt, and the other was an injured kid. Of course, that kid was the heir to the Wolf King. It was possible for him to transform into a wolf. Princess Rosalind was strong and cold. She had the most explosive strength after Choi Han and used her strength logically. She was not interested in taking control of the throne. Instead, her goal was to create the continent's greatest magic tower, and she would grow into a hero as she moved closer to her goal. The Archduke of the Kingdom, who attempted the assassination on Rosalind, will be tortured by Beecrocs in the future. Cal's heart started to shake as he recalled just how clear and descriptive that torture scene had been in the novel. His heart seemed to be shaking quite a bit these days. Rosalind. Locke? Cal nodded his head at Choi Han's voice. Yes, those two people. I'm glad you know how to read. Choi Han continued to stare at the two names. Cal's gaze fell on the name Locke. Locke. This world had other races such as elves, dwarves, and beast people. However, the most secretive of all races were the beast people. Beast people. This included beasts, birds, and even insects. Beast people were different from monsters because of the existence of a conscience. Locke has the purest blood of the wolf people. Locke had received the bloodline to dominate the wolves. The beast people with the purest bloodline tend to look weak and average when they are in their animal form or their human form. However, once they enter their berserk state, they become more cruel and violent than anyone else. And Locke was the only survivor of the entire Blue Wolf tribe. Cal took a map out of a drawer and opened it up on the desk. You will start the journey with me. He then pointed to a location on the map. We will separate at this point. You just follow what I wrote on the paper. Choi Han didn't ask any questions and just quietly listened. Cal watched Choi Han for a bit. There was a reason Choi Han had to go with him until that specific point. I need to avoid the crazy dragon, the beginning of the birth of a hero. Like any other novel, new villains had to appear after Cal. However, those villains were not easy picking like Cal. The next villain involved a marquis who led one of the noble factions. Throughout the beginning of the novel, he gets in the way of the Crown Prince and Choi Han. He ends up being ruined around Volume 2, but Choi Han runs into the marquis for the first time on this trip to the capital. That bastard raised the crazy dragon. It definitely was a crazy dragon. It was still just a baby dragon. That black dragon was being tortured by the Marquis's future successor in secret. They were training it to obey the Marquis's commands. They're crazy too. Dragons are the strongest beings in the world. How do they think they will be able to tame a dragon? It actually does make sense. The Marquis managed to get his hands on a dragon egg through the secret organization and chained it down with mana-restricting chains as soon as it hatched. Cal could not fathom the extent of the strength of that secret organization. But would dragons be called the strongest beings in the world for no reason? This black dragon that was less than 5 years old was still a dragon. In the end, the dragon goes crazy and berserk. It may be young, but in the novel, it exploded with enough mana to remove the mana-restricting chains. Since its mana was restricted, the mana it exploded was actually its own life force. After living in a cave and being tortured every day without ever being able to see sunlight, the young dragon cuts into its own life force to find freedom. After managing to escape, the dragon ends up losing its rationality and goes berserk. The village that Choi Han is staying at the time almost ends up in danger because of the berserk dragon, and Choi Han ends up fighting against the black dragon. Choi Han gazed at the small dragon that was less than 1 meter long. It managed to blow up a mountain with that small body and put the villagers in significant danger. However, Choi Han could not easily attack this dragon. The eyes of this dragon that had lost its rationality were in pain and full of sorrow. However, the black dragon's mouth was smiling. Choi Han found that to be extremely sad. Choi Han ends up killing that black dragon and gifting it the freedom called death. Cal had to go to that village. Either Choi Han takes care of it, or I prevent it from going crazy and find a way to release it. There was no other choice because it was on his way to the capital. He would need to take an extremely long detour to avoid that village, and that would require a long time and change the flow of the story. He would also be late in arriving at the capital if he took that detour. For being a crazy dragon, it's described as being a really cute dragon. The novel described it as a cute black dragon with short legs. It mentioned that it was even scarier that such a cute existence had gone crazy and caused chaos. Cal decided to stop thinking about the dragon for now, and instead gave Choi Han the rest of the order. Come to the capital with the owners of these 2 names. That is your way of paying me back. Choi Han asked as question. I just need to protect these 2 people, if you want to. These two people should be strong enough to not require Choi Han's protection. Especially Princess Rosalind. She wouldn't even budge an inch even if a truckload of cows with the indestructible shield attacked her at the same time. Do as you wish. However, you must definitely come to the capital. You must also meet me there without being injured. You can at least keep yourself safe, right? Cal and Choi Han should have no reason to meet again after that. Choi Han has another negative encounter with the secret organization after getting involved with Locke. Meeting with Locke should allow Choi Han to stop the danger in the capital like in the novel. Why are you not answering? Can you do it? Choi Han's gaze became a bit clearer. Yes, I can do it. He seemed to be speaking in a more respectful tone than before, but Cal just let it be. He relaxed a bit after seeing Choi Han put the paper in his chest pocket. I should have been drinking as I did that. It was really tiring to talk to Choi Han with Cal's body. You can leave now. Cal waved his hand at Choi Han. Choi Han started to walk toward the door after seeing Cal's gesture. Cal leaned his back on the chair and watched Choi Han reach for the door before starting to speak again. In addition, everything we discussed here is a secret. I'm sure I don't need to tell you that. Choi Han did not look back and answered as he opened the door. Of course. Choi Han's voice seemed to indicate that he was smiling, but Cal did not care. Once he was alone, Cal took out a piece of paper and pen and started to write in Korean. After writing for a while, he left the study and headed for his father's office. Father. Yes, I need money. Okay, I will tell Hans to give you some. Cal needed a lot of money. Once Cal laid down on the bed with another 10 million gallon check in his chest pocket, Ron approached him and put a bottle on the nightstand as he started to speak. It is warm lemon honey tea. My son made it especially for you, young master. Please have a good night. I am always by your side. Cal's sleepiness went away in an instant. No matter what happened, he needed to make sure the two of them went away with Choi Han. The next day, Cal Henatus headed to the slums as soon as he woke up.